guys have Minnesota sports flowing in their veins. Mackey and Judd on Score North and ScoreNorth.com.
All right, welcome in. Welcome into my my beige room here. Moving into a new place of beige walls that need to be decorated. With my beige dog sitting next to me here too.
About to say,
dog's been good today.
Yeah, she only barked once. It's kind of tough because we literally had her. We had Maya at two different La Quinta inns as we drove across the mountains. We had a La Quinta Inn in Bozeman, and then we had a La Quinta Inn in Fargo. Very nice hospitality. Although the one in Fargo, there must have been 75 youth hockey families staying there. Pizza party,
Sounds
pool
right.
party,
Oh,
and
sure.
Mackey Mackey was wondering.
Yep.
Who are all these rugrats sprinting up and down the hallways until 1 o'clock in the morning? But she's hanging in there. You guys ever partake in La Quinta Inn? Judd and I used to stay at the La Quinta Inn in Fort Myers, didn't we?
Yeah. Yeah,
Nice.
we shared a room.
They're not a sponsor of the show, but I always
Hey,
have
if they're
decent experiences
interested.
at La Quinta Inns. You know? Yeah, we're open for business if you want. La Quinta Inn.
Yeah, La
if you
Quinta
want.
Inn. Come on. Come aboard, Mackey and Judd, Purple Daily.
Judd, it's Pecking Order Tuesday here. We love to rank things on this show, and so why don't you take the ball here and run and rank things however you see fit.
So I was driving around a couple days ago, and you know how occasionally stuff will just hit you in, like you all of a sudden think of an idea, and you're not quite sure why. Like it wasn't like you were purposely trying to do it. But I'm driving around, and I also
you weren't purposely trying to think of ideas.
I was just driving. I'm driving,
zoned out,
and I'm listening to like Sirius or something, and I'm zoned out, and all of a sudden it hit me. We talk about, and rightfully so, we have talked about the Twins' epic playoff losing streak a ton, and it deserves it. It deserves it. But I began thinking about other Minnesota sports issues similar to that basically get ignored, like monumental things. So I came up with a very small list. It's just 3, but they're all worthy of note, and they're all like, and it's not like, you know, the Vikings Super Bowl skid or defeats, because we've talked about that a ton. We've talked about their losses.
There's like themes that we should shine a spotlight on.
Yes,
kind of
exactly
okay.
right.
Okay.
And so I came up with 3. And here is from my list, from the bottom on up. Here is my 3, okay? The third fact, if you think about this too, I mean, these are all things that when I stopped and gave them some thought, I was like, that's really impressive. For the most part, not good, but it's impressively, it's surprising, I guess is the best word to use.
Okay.
All right. So the third one is this. Not only does the now self-proclaimed state of hockey not have a Stanley Cup in its history, but it has only now made 2 Stanley Cup Finals appearances in 48 combined years of the North Stars and Wild. The Wild's not new now. The Wild's been around since 2000, okay?
Yeah.
The North Stars made 17 playoff appearances and went 80-86 in said playoffs in 26 years before they moved to Dallas. The Wild, 12 playoff appearances over 22 seasons, is 32-58, and they have won 4 playoff series total, including 2 back in 2003, okay? So the Wild and North Stars, if you combined them in the playoffs in nearly 50 seasons of the National Hockey League being in this state, have a winning percentage of .438.
State of hockey, man.
This is the state of hockey.
Yeah, gotta step our game up.
But I mean, we
Hockey.
don't have a Stanley Cup ever in 48 years. 48 years is enough time to win, like, let's say 1.
It's hard to. It's kind of embarrassing because we take so much pride in hockey from all levels. I mean, as I was just telling you, a La Quinta Inn in Fargo, and you see all these parents spending thousands of dollars a year on their kids to play hockey, and that's in North Dakota technically, but close enough. I feel like we need a Stanley Cup championship to really validate calling ourselves the state of hockey.
I feel like you're right.
And I don't know that it's coming this year, but Kaprizov seems like the type of player that could be the one that pushes you finally to that level, as long as you keep building out the roster. So I'm on one hand, like, yes, this is a very depressing thing, and I had not thought much about this. We think about the Vikings never winning a Super Bowl, like the fact that the state of hockey, two franchises have only been to the Stanley Cup Finals twice in over a half century. But the positive there is that Kirill Kaprizov seems like the type of player that you could envision, a couple teeth missing while he holds up the Stanley Cup, skating around XL Energy Center. I could see this if I think hard enough.
You know, if you like to rile up the Kirk Cousins Crusaders on Twitter, I fired out a tweet yesterday comparing that the Wild should take notes on the Wolves from last night, how they closed out the game on some great defense from McDaniels and Anthony Edwards, and I called Minnesota the state of hoops, being cheeky instead of the state of hockey. Nice. I know some hockey fans do not like the state of hoops moniker being in place instead of the state of hockey.
It is a very popular. What was the Cousins tie-in? You're
riling
people up like I rile up Cousins Crusaders.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't think I rile up Cousins Crusaders. I think I tweet out facts about the Vikings, and some people have problems sort of coping with those facts. That's how I see it. But
if this town, and Phil and I have talked about this on numerous occasions, if you give them good basketball teams, it's a great basketball town.
Yeah, I mean, the Target Center, I'm excited now to get, I mean, there's only like 9 home games until they're going to play probably at least 9 more home games after the regular season if they keep playing clamps defense on the best scorers in the NBA on the road like they did last night. But yeah, it's funny because like most people know that there's never been a Stanley Cup hoisted here, to get back to your first point. But it's not something that you think about as consciously as maybe you think about the Vikings not having a Super Bowl or the Twins. Maybe it's because we're just beating those drums on our show, too. It's like the Twins haven't won a playoff game in almost 20 years. That's really bad, but not as bad as the state of hockey basically never going to the championship series. Interesting.
Well, and keep in mind, too, so the Wild, 22 years, 12 appearances in the playoffs, 4 series wins. But the 2 in 2003 were great fun, but that franchise was 3 years old, okay? So essentially, I mean, if you want to shine a light on how little the Parisi and Suter years meant to what we thought would be Stanley Cup runs, 2 playoff wins.
Yeah. No, it's incredible. It is incredible. Yeah.
All right. Okay. Fact number 2. Speaking of basketball town, all right? I'm going to actually have some good news and some praise here, but of course going to have to balance that out with the men's team.
I'm afraid I've got some bad news, Declan.
And it's this.
Bad news, Barrett.
Bad news. Okay.
The Minnesota Lynx, the WNBA's Lynx, have retired 3 numbers in their history. Whalen's 13, Brunson's 32, Simone Augustus's 33 in 23 seasons. Maya Moore's 23 will be retired, I'm sure, very soon. Okay, so that's going to bring it up to 4. The Timberwolves, and I know the Garnett thing has not worked out. We can debate that. But anyway, the Wolves right now have retired 1 number in their history, and that was following the tragic death of Malik Sealy in a car accident. Okay? That is 34 years. Okay. So let's say that does not take place, that the world has changed, Sealy lives, and let's say Garnett, his 21 goes to the rafters. Let me repeat what the years are, okay? The Lynx, I think they were born in 1999, 23 years, have been able to not only win championships, but retire 3 going on 4 numbers. Ideally, Garnett's 21 is in the rafters in 34 years. Just think about the incredible lack of greatness, though, from that franchise. Just with not even record. Let's just talk about players.
Yeah, and I think there's an alternate universe where if managed and handled differently, Kevin Love might. If let's say Kevin Love had been like a 15-year franchise player, not on the level of Garnett. Sure. And they found an Anthony Edwards type to pair with him or something, and they make some playoff runs. Like Kevin Love's going to be celebrated for his career in Cleveland. I don't know if they raise his jersey to the rafters next to LeBron's, but a career like that would have gone a long way in Minnesota. But it got botched from a personal relationship standpoint. David Kahn, it got botched because the Wolves were just bad and injured and stuff, and were cycling through coaches. There's probably an alternate universe in which Karl Anthony Towns' jersey goes to the Raptors. I think if he were to get traded this summer, which is a distinct possibility, I don't think they raise his jersey to the Raptors, even though he's like leading them in all these different categories. Now, a development on the Kevin Garnett front. So last night, and by the way, there will be I know you guys did a Judd's Hockey Show recapping the Wild game last night. Kyle and I will do a Flagrant Howls today, too, so check that out on the YouTube channel or the Mackey and Judd or Flagrant Howls podcast feed. But Kevin Garnett was watching that game last night. Mm-hmm. One of the more exciting Wolves games of the season. They had a 26-point lead at one point on a fully healthy and stocked Kyrie plus Luka Doncic Mavericks team. And then Kyrie just went unconscious. Like, he hit like 7 straight shots with a hand in his face from 3 or mid-range and brought the Mavericks all the way back, basically. And then the Wolves played clamps defense on those two guys. And KG, after the game was over, tweets, Wolves tightened up the laces on D. Don't underestimate culture shifters. Right. ... And I don't know if he's talking about D'Lo swapped out for Conley.
Yeah, that's what it sounds
probably.
like.
Or Anthony Edwards and Jade McDaniels as like the KG Marbury culture shifters from 25 years ago. But the fact that KG has an eye on the Timberwolves, he's intrigued enough to tweet compliments. Maybe the next step is finally getting number 21 up in the Raptors, although I don't think he's going to agree to that until Glenn Taylor is officially gone. So we have to wait at least another year, right? Till, isn't it the end of 2023 when
hopefully
A-Rod and Laurie kick in? So interesting, KG.
Hopefully, if this whole thing works, if the sale works, I'm becoming. I've always been skeptical. I'm becoming more skeptical by the day.
They made their payment in December. It's more of an A-Rod issue.
No, they deferred it. That
They
payment's not
deferred
made
it?
yet. Yeah, to March. Oh, yeah, it got deferred.
Yeah.
Now everyone's trying to say, nothing to see here, nothing to see here. But meanwhile, it's like, okay, there might be something to see here.
Okay. Well,
And
maybe
it might not
is
be as
there
much
another
of an A-Rod thing as we thought. Would you like to buy the team? I mean, you're back in town.
Well, what's wrong with is Mark Laurie is all of his net worth just tied up in like
I don't know.
property and
I just know-
business valuation or something?
I just know that I think it was starting with that Sportico piece a couple of months ago that they deferred, that Glenn gave them permission to defer the payment. I mean, Glenn's at every game still. He's in the
It's
press
like,
room.
my
with
wife and
Becky.
I
It's great.
we're about to buy a new couch, and you can like do like
No.
a payment plan.
This would be
You
like
can, you
if
can defer payments out on your new couch. Maybe
Right, but
that's
this
what
would
they're
be-
doing. They're just like
This is Afterpay. This is a firm. Like, that's
yes,
what they're
just
doing.
to be very, very
Yeah.
clear, this would be like if you bought the couch and deferred payments, and then the couch folks came and said, "Okay, Phil, you deferred it to now, pay up," and you're like, "How about in 2 months?"
Well, and by the way, I'm not.
And I blame your wife.
I'm not Warren Buffett, so you shouldn't. I'm not the foremost authority on what you should do with your money. But if you have to, generally speaking, if you have to like defer payments on furniture, you probably shouldn't get that furniture. But I digress. And maybe that's the moral of the story for Alex Rodriguez and Mark Laurie here. If 1 year in you have to defer payments a few months because you can't afford not the whole payment, the second payment, then maybe we have a
Meanwhile,
problem.
the Suns get sold to some dude who basically comes in and writes a $4 billion check. He's like,
and
yeah,
trades
here.
trades for. He has a bright idea in the middle of the night. So what if we traded for KD? Yeah, well, let's do that. Let's make that
Got
happen.
More money than God. Okay. All right. Here's the first fact: basketball again, and it's Wolves and Lynx. Just to contextualize this, okay? Because like we always talk about the Wolves, and yeah, they've been far too often a running joke. They're not good, but they've been here almost 35 years. In 34 seasons, the Timberwolves have made, and I'll just go through this as slow as possible because it hits you. The Timberwolves have made 10 playoff appearances in 34 years, and 8 were in consecutive years, including 7 that came to an end in the first round. In that time, so 34 years, they have won 2 playoff series, which both obviously came in the same year, and they are 20-38, a .345 winning percentage in the playoffs. 2 of those wins, as I said, came in the same year. And just to combine it, the Wild and Wolves have combined for 6 playoff series win in their history. outside of their best runs. So like both of them had 1 year great runs. But like if you just strip those away and are like, okay, what's the consistency of this?
Are you trying to just make us feel bad with this right now?
No, because I want to give you the Lynx. No, I think these are things that we need to bang the drum on more often that we ignore. And like the Twins are probably like, you're busting our chops, and we do, and you deserve it, Twins. In 23 years, the Lynx, 13 playoff appearances. They've won 16 series. They've won 4 titles. They are 42-25 in a league where, by the way, your playoff series are far shorter. So like your opportunity in the NBA, if and when you get to the playoffs, you could have a lot of games.
Yeah.
It's just when you look at the Wolves and Wild, the ineptitude overall, and then the playoff ineptitude, I think avoids as much scrutiny as it deserves because it's been so complete, we've lost expectations.
Yeah, I think apathy. Well, what's hard with the hockey team is that they went away for like 10 years or 8 or 9 years or whatever it was. They
Right.
nuked a franchise, sent it to Dallas, and
7
there was
years,
a
right?
yeah, and there was a whole generation, and I am in that generation. I was born in 1985. I don't really remember the North. I think I went to like one North Stars game as a 7-year-old or something. I don't remember the 91 trip to the Stanley Cup Finals, which is funny because I do. Well, I guess the 91 trip to the finals would have been like 4 months before the Twins. I do remember the Twins playing in the World Series vaguely.
Yeah, it was
Like
the
I
spring,
remember
that spring.
sitting in our living room and stuff, watching like Game 6 as a 6-year-old. So if you were born in 1985 or anywhere kind of in that neighborhood, you weren't really a North Stars fan, and then you grew up from 1993 to 2000. I was like a teenager, so you form your sports. So I think it takes a while to get fans rabid again. And the Wild didn't have superstar. They had Gaborik for a minute, but they didn't have like a superstar player to attach to until Parisi and Suter. But they didn't really like grow those guys. They kind of bought those guys. So part of this is it took them 20 years to find a homegrown, and by homegrown I just mean organizationally homegrown superstar in Kirill Kaprizov. And so now there's going to be more. I think if they continue to sputter in the next few years, there will be more. It'll be 20 years of equity built up, a new generation of fans. The Timberwolves are kind of the opposite in that my age group got completely hooked on Kevin Garnett and Stephon Marbury and then the Cassell Sprewell teams. And those teams were good every year, and they were going to the playoffs. And they just couldn't figure out from a front office standpoint how to draft well and get a second superstar once Marbury left. So I think there was a ton of passion about the Wolves' failures for a while. But then when you're that irrelevant and that bad and embarrassing for 15 years, that's when they lost a generation of fans. So like both winter sports teams, one in the 90s and then one in the 2000s, for different reasons, skipped a generation of fans. I think that's the biggest takeaway here.
Yes,
and you could say, well, maybe the Twins kind of did too, but the Twins won a World Series in 91. And I guess, I don't know, maybe there's just something about baseball. And they came back 10 years later with the contraction team.
Right.
It doesn't feel like they skipped a generation of fans, though, because maybe they bought some equity with the World Series championship. And you still got to watch Puckett. Like, as a kid, I don't really remember Puckett much in the World Series, but I remember like watching him as a kid. Sure. They had a superstar player that you could watch throughout most of the 90s. So, I don't know. That's my harebrained logic anyways.
Jax?
Yeah, it's interesting because I remember more of like the second half. Like I remember Marbury, like of the Wolves side. Like I remember Marbury. I think even my brother had a Marbury jersey. So as I became a conscious sports fan, like that was towards the end of that run. And I think, in fact, and we talked about this on a Minnesota Sports Rewind, I think my first ever sporting event was when the Wolves beat the Chicago Bulls for the first time in franchise history. And I was like 4. I was like 4 or 5 years old because I would have been like, 97, and I was born in 92. So, yeah, I would have been like 4 or 5 years old. And I loved those Wolves runs. I mean, those Wolves runs were great. And the Wild one run to the conference finals was a lot of fun because I was like 12, 11. So I was really conscious and knew a lot of those players. But it is kind of interesting to like when you think about how the Wolves were hooked because of KG, and the Wild were hooked because it was fun, it was sexy, and it was a fun little cute run to start. But then, I mean, Martin Havlet was like the most exciting Wild player in 2008, dude. Like, that's brutal. Brutal to attach.
Yeah, and that's why, like, right now, I feel like even though it's like everything you just laid out is accurate about the Wolves and the Wild and just the inability to even give us a little conference finals taste and flirtation, just take us to the championship series. Like with the Wild, you can kind of fathom it because hockey is a little bit more volatile in the playoffs. You could sort of see, they get hot, or Marc-Andre Fleury, has one last run in him. With the Wolves, even as they ascend with Anthony Edwards, it's still so hard based on their organizational history to even envision them playing in the NBA Finals because the level of basketball that you see is so different than what you usually see with the Wolves.
Right.
But both franchises have the young superstar that's ideally going to be around for like 10 years that fans fall in love with. They're at least competitive and have some peripheral pieces around them. Boldy, Jaden McDaniels over here that could play along 8 to 10 of those years with the young superstar. So I'm very hopeful for these winter teams, but it's hard not to be a little jaded and cynical if you've lived through it for the last 2 or 3 decades. Indeed.
I feel like the playoff ineptitude gets too big a pass because the overall ineptitude, especially from the Wolves, has been so high. But the one thing that we know is making the playoffs in both leagues is not like impossible. A finals is tough. I'll go there. But I find it particularly funny that we refer to this now as the state of hockey, for instance. And there's not a Stanley Cup here. There's not one Stanley Cup. And again, it's a combined nearly 50 years.
Yeah.
Nearly 50 years of the National Hockey League in this town. And you have made it to the Stanley Cup Finals twice. And it's never been with a team where we said, okay, that's a great team. It's always been both North Stars runs, 81 and 91, were really fun, but they were also this surprise. Like, wouldn't you like to see a team put together that, oh man, they made it to the finals? Yeah, you know what?
Nice.
They're that good.
Yeah.
So, as I watched the bleeping Bruins and Celtics again this winter, just beat the crap out of every opponent, what I say is, I'll just take one of those, okay? Just give me the one helping of Bruins hockey. Give me that.
It is not crazy. I'll speak for the Wolves for a second because last night was like, by the way, that was Judd's pecking order there. That's a wrap on the 3 storylines that maybe don't get talked about as much as Vikings futility and Twins futility. But last night was like, of the 50 games or 55, 60 games they've played this season, that was one of the 5 most fun Wolves watching experiences. You had ball movement. Yes, they lapsed and they blew like 20 points off of a 26-point lead, but you had Anthony Edwards doing Anthony Edwards things, Jaden McDaniels clamps defense. You had Rudy Gobert playing one of the best games he's played all season. Didn't miss a shot because all of them were just dunks and putbacks. And then in the end, like, you've seen so many Wolves games where, oh, here we go, they're about to blow a 15 or 20-point lead, and the wheels come off, and then the adults in the room step up. Mike Conley, yep. I think Anthony Edwards has become an adult in the room, and Chris Finch too. The adults in the room step up and say, "Nah, sorry, Kyrie. Nice hot stretch there. You scored 21 points, but we're gonna clamp you real quick here. Just gonna sneak by you, clamp you there real quick, and we're gonna win this game." So like games like last night make you feel like, wow. We're still 4 years away from Anthony Edwards' prime and Jaden McDaniels' prime. It makes you feel like there's some good stuff here on the horizon.
And that's why you can't dismiss culture. That's why you can't dismiss the human beings that also make up the team. Look,
yes,
a star player or two, awesome. And Ant is great. But the reality is, Mike Conley in a moment like that is a preferable presence. He might not be a preferable player, but he's a preferable presence to D'Lo. And the reality of this conversation when it comes to playoff games with Cat is this: how does he process it? Because when he melts down, when he throws the ball down, when he yells at officials, that does not help a moment like that. It only adds fuel to the fire. So that is why the actual roster construction in the locker room, on the court, but not just the playing, becomes so important. And for those who dismiss it. Oh, D'Lo's great. D'Lo's fantastic. Okay, he might be when he's going good, but when things don't go well for him, what does he bring?
Well, God, there's so many things out there because I don't think just with my travels last week and our show schedules, did we didn't really get into some of the D'Lo reporting that like John Krasinski went on Dan Barrero's radio show and started kind of opening up about how D'Lo would openly clown Rudy Gobert in the locker room, and like, it was an uncomfortable vibe among players and coaches, and or he would chirp him on the court and stop passing to him and stuff. It's like, dude, I get it. The front office just plopped a $50 million thing here onto this roster that went to the playoffs last year, but this is your team, and he is a good player. He's not the most agile offensive player, but he's one of the best defensive players in the league. By the way, the statistics would bear that out when he's on the court for the Timberwolves. And if you're going to resort as an adult grown man who's been in the league for 7 or 8 years, and you're on like your 4th or 5th team for a reason, and you're going to openly clown him, I mean, that to me, that's enough to make the D'Lo for Conley straight up trade worthwhile. And the Wolves got some picks, and the Wolves got some salary cap help being able to carry over that contract slot another year. The other thing you mentioned, Karl Anthony Towns, something interesting from last night's game. It's just neither here nor there, but Mike Conley at the end had a chance. The Wolves, I think, were up 2, and Conley hit the first free throw to make it 3, but then he bricked the second free throw, or maybe I think he bricked the second free throw and the Mavericks called timeout is what happened. And then that's when the final sequence played out. So Mike Conley, 35 years old, the dude has played in a bazillion playoff games. He's played on a bunch of 50, 55-win teams. He missed a free throw, not ideal, and it kept the lead at 3 for the Timberwolves. He's walking back to the huddle, and Karl Anthony Towns in street clothes is coming out like, hey, no, it's okay. It's okay. Like, he's trying to console Mike Conley. Like, it's all good. Like, it's okay. And it's like, dude, Conley was as stoic as any player. Like, Conley didn't need Karl Anthony Towns' consolation after missing that free throw last night. But
he did the same after the loss. I think it was on Friday. Kat did the same type of thing with Ant.
But that's okay, dude. It's all good. It's like,
but that's where it's important. He realizes who he is now. Like,
well,
that's
where
I
don't know if he does, but yeah.
No, he doesn't. But again, I think that's going to become a problem because Kat, like, to your point, he's trying to be Kareem. He's trying to be Cap, right? I'm the captain of the team. No, really, you're not. And don't worry about it. Just do your job now.
The dynamic here, and it's, and the Wolves have played they've been kind of win-loss. Although they are there's like an 11-game stretch going back 3 weeks against all playoff teams in the West, and then Orlando, who is 19-14 since their bad start. So they're playing like a playoff team. And the Wolves went 7-4 over that stretch. They've gone kind of every other game, win-loss. Mm-hmm. So it's they're playing well. They could use an extra piece. Could Towns be the extra piece that helps push this thing even further? He could be.
Right.
But he could also be the piece that kind of derails some of the things that have taken place here, because Anthony Edwards rising up and D'Lo moving out and this thing having a clear pecking order on the court, it's Anthony Edwards number 1. Leadership, Mike Conley probably sitting up there pretty high. Austin Rivers. So how does Kat coming back either alter, enhance, or upset the dynamic is going to be something really interesting to watch probably toward the end of the month. But, yeah, D'Lo, I hope you enjoy your time in Los Angeles. Thanks for helping the Wolves get back to the playoffs last year. Great game against the Clippers, but having an adult in the room is going to be helpful for this team right now.
Absolutely.
So, all right, dudes. Over on Purple Daily today, you can find reckless draft speculation with our guy Thor Nystrom and a bonus episode kind of laying out, now that the Super Bowl is over, some of the big decisions that the Vikings have to make. Are they going to be smooth sailing and easy, or are they going to be drama-filled? And we will go through each one of those on Purple Daily. Mackey and Judd back at you tomorrow with the official end of the Write That Down season results. See you guys.